So can you hear me? Can you see my screen? Tell me yes to both. Can you see my screen? If you can see my screen, please type screen. All right. And you can hear me as well. If you can hear me, type here. Okay. So I apologize. The network seems very bad. That's why. All right. Please bear with me. There is not much I can do. Okay. So just as you know, the course is GST or GST 105. Ignore the field in front, is a GST course. History and philosophy of science. So as you were told in your mail, in your module, and on the eLearn platform, today we're beginning module 2, history of science, that of medieval history of medieval in the medieval philosophy. That's what we're looking at today. So, okay. So in the Middle Ages, science in the Middle Ages. That's what we're looking at today. And so when we talk about Middle Ages, another name for it is medieval philosophy, or philosophy is the same as Middle Ages, whichever one you want to use. So at this period, we have the dominance of Christian theology. And what characterized it was the decline, that is slowing down of science and its rise again much later. So in the Middle Ages, one of the characteristics is the rise or the dominance of Christian theology. With that dominance, we have the decline in science, after which it rose up again. So there were two phases within the medieval period. So if you're asked, another name for medieval period is called Middle Ages. What is the main characteristics of medieval period? The main characteristic, am I sharing my screen? No, is it recording? Can you see whether it's recording? Can somebody tell me if it's recording? Can you see the recording icon? Okay, all right, thank you. So in the medieval period or the Middle Ages, there are two phases within this period. The first is the Dark Age, and the second is the Renaissance. Okay, so we're going to look at what each of them means. So when we say science in the Dark Ages, the Dark Age is the first part. The Dark Age is the first part of the Middle Ages in Europe. And the reason it's called the Dark Age is because at that period, they experienced constant invasion by barbarian tribes. So if you see how many phases do we have in the medieval period, there are two phases. The first is the Dark Age, which is what we're explaining now. The reason why it's so called is because there were constant invasions by barbarian tribes. That is, the tribes that were outside the Roman Empire. Civilization at the time also flourished under the rule of the Roman Empire before it came to a standstill. Okay. So the other reason is that development in learning, architecture, science, and art, it slowed down. or stopped altogether. So two reasons why the Dark Age is so called: constant invasions by barbarians, and there was a slowdown or decline in development in learning in architecture, science, and art. Life at the period of the Dark Age also became very unsafe as the result of many wars among the petty kingdoms within the empire. So basically, the Dark Age wasn't a very glorious age in terms of security and in terms of professional development, because we could see that at that period, the period was constantly invaded by barbarians. There was a slow or a complete halt to learning, to architecture, to science, to art. And also there was insecurity. It also plagued the time. So in the Middle Ages, there was also one Christian church at the time, which was Roman Catholic, and you should note this. So during the Middle Ages, we had said that we had a rise in Christianity, and the kind of Christianity that dominated was that of the Roman Catholic Church in Western Europe. So the church became a symbol of unity, such that the United Christian was also called Christendom. So during the Dark Ages, you also have the church fathers, the fathers of the church. They showed very little interest, very minimal interest in the knowledge of nature for its own sake, right? They were more interested in theology. So the knowledge of nature for its own sake, it did not interest the fathers of the church at the time. So because they believed that holding such discussion on the nature and position of the earth would not help them in their hope of life to come. So they were more preoccupied with things about God, with things about theology, than talking about issues that pertain to nature, because according to them, it's not going to help them to reach the afterlife. You know, afterlife is a characteristics of Christianity and probably of many religions, in which the life we have on earth is not the end. When we die, there is life after death. So the church fathers at the time, they were not interested in discussions pertaining to knowledge of nature, because it's not going to help them regarding life after now. So based on Aristotle's dictum, who is Aristotle? Aristotle was a philosopher in the ancient period. So Aristotle had this dictum that says everything that moves is moved by something else. So whatever moved, another thing had moved it. Thomas Aquinas, one of the church fathers during the medieval period, affirmed the existence of God, since God is an unmoved mover. So God is that which moves things, but he himself, God, is not moved. That's what Thomas Aquinas means by saying there is a God, because God is that. He affirmed the existence of God because God is the one who moves, but he himself is unmoved. God is the unmoved mover. So Aristotle's cosmology, when we talk about cosmology, what does it mean? The study of the cosmos, the study of the universe, was the dominant basis of science in the Dark Ages. So remember, Aristotle belongs to the ancient period. The Dark Age is one of the phases in medieval period. Medieval period or Middle Ages came immediately after ancient period. So Aristotle's cosmology, that's the study of the universe, was the dominant basis of science in the Dark Ages. So Aristotle's idea was quite influential, not just in the ancient period where he belonged, but also in the Dark Age. So Aristotle believed that heavenly bodies influenced human destinies. It is the heavenly bodies, like angels and the likes, that influence our destinies. So despite that this Dark Age was not a very glorious period in history, there were also advances. There were still advances in the sciences. There were advances made during the Dark Age. And so what are some of the advances? The first is that the rigid horse collar and iron horseshoe, they were invented during the Dark Age. So inventions during the Dark Age, rigid horse collar and the iron horseshoe. Those were two inventions during the Dark Age. All right. So while the rigid horse collar, what it does, what they use it to do, is to help to shift the weight of a load to a horse's shoulder. We're going to see the picture in some slides to come, if not the next slide. So don't get confused about that. While the horseshoe protects a horse's hoof from damage, and so it helped the animal to travel faster and farther than it could without them. So remember at the time, this Dark Age, the means of transportation they had were horses. So the invention of rigid horse collar and horseshoe were very important, because horses were used as animals of burden to for transportation and to also move from one place to the other. So what the horse collar did was to help shift the weight of the load to a horse's shoulder, and the horseshoe that was also invented during this Dark Age helped to protect a horse's hoof from damage, and so it helped the animal to travel farther and faster than it could if the animal didn't have horse collar and horseshoe. So these were important inventions, since the use of horses were their means of land transportation at the time, as I said. There are also still movies where you will see horses being used as animals of burden for transportation. So this is what we were referring to in the previous slide. You can see the rigid horse collar. You can see the rigid horse collar. You can see the horse itself in the center. This is the collar that is being worn here on the horse. And you can see the horseshoe, which aided the horse to be able to travel farther and faster. This is the horse collar that it was used to push to the shoulders of the horse so that it could carry load. All right. So monks in monasteries at this time, this Dark Age, they ensure that some amount of learning was kept alive. Remember, we had said that during the Dark Age, there was decline in learning, in the development of art, arithmetic, and the likes. But despite that slowness or despite the decline or the slowdown of learning, there were monks in monasteries that made sure that some amount of learning was kept alive. These monks, they helped to translate Asian language and works of Egyptians, Babylonians, and Greeks into Latin. They did that. So they made sure that some learning, everything was not completely dead. They made sure that some learning was still taking place. So they also kept alive some knowledge of the art of agriculture, since they were practical farmers. This is also evidenced in the idea of invention of horse collar and horseshoe that we said. They used it to transport their farm produce. So they were agriculturists. So while Europe was in the Dark Ages, Islamic learning also started to flourish in the East. So Dark Age is a period in history of Europe, but while Europe was in Dark Age, in the East, Islamic learning started to flourish. So they criticized and tried to make their own innovations. That's the Islamic cleric or Islamic learning, or the Islamic people. They criticized and they tried to make their own innovations in the East, while Europe was in the Dark Age in the West. So the major interest of the Arabs was in astronomy and astrology. They were majorly interested in astronomy and astrology. So the kind of innovation they did was that they constructed great astronomical observatories, which they used in checking Ptolemaic predictions. The Arabs, who were interested in astronomy and astrology, what they did was to construct astronomical observatories, and they used this to check Ptolemaic prediction. Ptolemy is the name of somebody, Claudius Ptolemy. We will see who he is later on in the course of this facilitation. So they made many improvements in medicine, that's the Arabs. They also had great contributions, significant contributions in medicine. Sorry, this is blocking. So they developed the primitive chemistry of Greeks that is known as alchemy. So these Arabs, they were instrumental to the development of the primitive chemistry of the Greeks that is referred to as alchemy. So one of the Arabs called Razis, he was the greatest of the Arabic alchemists. So if you're asked who was the greatest of the Arabic chemists, his name is Razis or Razis, I don't know. So his works were based on experience and experiment. The work of Razis was based on experience and experiment and is regarded as the greatest of Arabic alchemists. So the most eminent Muslim physicist was Ibn al-Haytham. You could note that as well. Most eminent physicists, Muslim physicist, Ibn al-Haytham. His chief work was done in optics and showed a great advancement in experimental method. Experimental method is the method of science. So his work, which was mostly done in optics, showed it indicated a great advancement in experimental methods. So Islamic thinkers, they were not just great medicine men, they also showed great fascination for numbers. And this made them to create algebra and the study of algebraic functions. You all are probably familiar with algebra, okay? It's credited to the Arabs, to Islamic thinkers. And so they also borrowed the idea of zero from Hindu. So if you're wondering where the idea of zero comes from, Islamic thinkers borrowed it from Hindu mathematics, and they invented what we refer to as Arabic numerals, which are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some of you don't know that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are called Arabic numerals. We only know Roman numerals. So science in the Renaissance. Remember we said two phases characterize the Dark Age, medieval philosophy, the Dark Age and Renaissance period. So this is Renaissance period. What we've been discussing before this particular slide is Dark Ages, all the ideas that characterize the Dark Age. So Renaissance, the second period in medieval period. Now, so this period is the second half of Middle Ages in Western Europe. And the period from which it started is between 9th to 15th century. So during this period, humans at the time, they became very dissatisfied with the way of life, which made progress very slow. So they were not happy with the happenings in the Dark Age. And so that ushered in Renaissance. So the Renaissance, during this period that we now call Renaissance, humans were not happy. They were dissatisfied with the way of life, which made progress very slow. And so they wanted changes in ideas, in beliefs, and in ways of thought. So there was a breakaway from the ancient way of thought, which they recognized as being very good, all right? And so the spirit of questioning came about during this Renaissance. They questioned old beliefs and they formed new opinions. And this period generally became known as a period of rebirth, as a revival of learning. If you're following, you will understand better because you experience a period which was characterized by decline in learning, characterized by insecurity, characterized by invasion. So with the advent of Renaissance, they want a change in the old beliefs. They want to form new beliefs. And so that brings about this period we call Renaissance. And what Renaissance means is rebirth or revival of learning. So the revival was started in Italy, and it was started by three famous scholars, which you have on the slide, Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio. Okay, so you could be asked, three famous scholars that started the Renaissance in Italy: Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio were those. So these artists, they try to show how superior the learning, arts, and culture of ancient Greeks were. And this led to a revival of interest in the Greek language. What these three people did was that they tried to show how superior the learning, art, and culture of ancient Greeks is. Like, there is a supremacy of learning, of art, and culture of the ancient Greeks. And this led to a revival of interest in the Greek language. So in the field of science were two very influential theologians and philosophers. This is still talking about Renaissance. So beyond those three, who were instrumental to the period of Renaissance in Italy, we also have two very influential theologians and philosophers, Albert the Great and Thomas Aquinas. These two were also very influential in the science in Renaissance as being theologians and philosophers, Albert the Great and Thomas Aquinas. So they were the first to accept the idea of a distinction between the knowledge of nature and revealed knowledge. But they also pointed that God was the author of both. So remember, we had said that during the medieval period, there was a decline, there was a dominance of Christian theology, especially the Roman Catholic Church. And that the church fathers, they were not interested in knowledge of nature because it didn't give them a hope of afterlife. Remember, we had said that. So during the second period found in the medieval period, which is the Renaissance, you have these two great theologians and philosophers being the first to accept the idea of a distinction between knowledge of nature and revealed knowledge. Despite that they are able to accept the differences between these two, they also put priority on the idea of God because they were also theologians. Okay, so they also pointed that God was the author of both. So the rationalistic approach, which separates large segments of human knowledge from theology, it's made a way for a relatively independent development of science. So this idea, where they are able to make a distinction, a difference between knowledge of nature and revealed knowledge, it's prepared a way for a real development, a real flourishing of science that would come during this Renaissance period. So some of these with experimental and practical bent of mind include the following. Some scientists at this period who had both experimental and practical bent of mind include Robert Grosseteste, who was an English philosopher of science and who was the one who determined the main direction of physical science in the 13th and 14th centuries. And he had knowledge of the workings of mirrors and of the nature of lenses. Robert Grosseteste. He had knowledge of the workings, how the mirror works, and how lenses work, and the nature of lenses. So another scientist of this period with both practical and experimental bent of the mind is Roger Bacon. Roger Bacon was English, Franciscan monk. He was the first man in Europe during this period under discussion Renaissance who approached with the spirit of science the great Arabians who preceded him. Remember, we had talked that when in Western Europe, they were in that age, there was a flourishing of learning in the East by Islamic thinkers. So this Roger Bacon, during the Renaissance, he approached with the spirit of science the great Arabians who had come before him. So this was because he had a clear understanding and experimental methods alone give certainty in science. So he had this clarity of mind to note that it is through the methods of experiment, through experimental methods, that we can gain certainty in science or certitude in science. So this was quite a revolutionary way of thinking at the time because it changed the mental attitude. So another of such a scholar with both practical and experimental bent of mind is Leonardo da Vinci. Some of you might be familiar with him. So an Italian, we can call him the incarnation of the true spirit of scientific thought of the Renaissance. So he was a painter, a sculptor, an engineer, an architect, a physicist. He was wearing different caps, a biologist and a philosopher, one person. He was all of this. So to him, the observation of nature and experimentation were the only true methods of science. If you've been following the class again, I say, scientific method, I think we looked at last week or 2 weeks ago. And if you remember the steps, you could see observation there, you see experimentation. So Leonardo da Vinci, observation of nature and experimentation were the only true methods of science. So it actually corroborates what we had said in the scientific method. So he also believed that knowledge of the ancient writers could be useful as a starting point, but could never be conclusive. Ancient writers in ancient period, you can use their method, but they are not ending themselves. They are not conclusive. Their method is not something to discountenance. They are useful, but they are not to be taken as ending themselves, as conclusive. So we need more. So in his opinion, mathematics, arithmetic, geometry, he gave knowledge that was certain within their own domain and therefore had something to do with reason. But true science, according to Da Vinci, so he is not saying that all of these other subjects, they don't have any merit, they are good in themselves, but that it is observation and experimentation that can give us certainty of knowledge. And a quotation of this is on the screen. In his words, those sciences which do not begin with experiment, the mother of all certainties, and which do not end with one clear experiment, are vain and full of errors. So there is a prioritization or supremacy of the methods of observation as a way of gaining certainty in knowledge in the thought of Da Vinci. Okay, seems we're done. So that actually brings us to the end of our discussion before we have some interactions. So what is the summary of all that we have done today? So today we have just finished discussing Unit 1 of Module 1. Okay, so it's only Unit 1 we'll be able to do today. I had asked you to read Unit 1 and 2, but we've only done Unit 1. So next week we'll continue. So, and this Unit 1 is on science in the Middle Ages of Europe. The Middle Ages is divided into two, the Dark Age and the Renaissance period. So we discussed science in the Dark Age. What are some advances in the Dark Age? The development of the horse collar and horseshoe, because it helped them to be able to move horses as a means of transportation. So it aided the horses to be able to walk faster and farther and to be able to carry goods. We also discussed, okay, those are the advances there. Then during the Renaissance, we talked about certain scientists. What does Renaissance mean? Renaissance means rebirth. It means revival of learning. And some of the scientists we discussed at the time are Robert Gustestes, Roger Bacon, and Leonardo da Vinci. And so that brings us to the end of this lecture. So it's time for you to interact with me. Let us talk. And you ask questions, you make comments. We go the usual way. You raise your electronic hands and call on you to contribute. Thank you. So I'll stop sharing briefly. I don't know if you can download it, but the recording will be made available on your eLearn platform. So you can go there and watch at your convenience. All right. To download, maybe you can, some are able to download the audio especially, but you can watch the video of the recording. I'll put the link on your eLearn under facilitation recordings. You'll be able to access it there. So I'm calling on Olayoye Seni to unmute and speak.
Good afternoon, ma.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Ma, I want to ask about the assignment you gave us last week about 3 features of science. Ma, please, where can we submit the assignment?
You are not to submit it, but you are just to note it, read it for your own consumption.
Okay, ma. Thank you,
just
ma.
note it, yes.
Okay, thank you, ma.
Thanks, too. So mute yourself. I'm calling Fatima Abdullahi. Unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
My question is that, like, even this subject, even this course, does it have like TMA? Because I saw it's not only one.
The course?
Yes.
Yes, the TMA is ongoing and people are already answering it.
Okay, but I don't used to see, like, I thought there will be the course name in the TMA. I just used to say TMA 1, 2, 3.
I think there will certainly be course code there. It is you that will identify the course you want to answer the TMA.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you too. So I'll call on Olayoye Teni, please lower your hand. You've spoken. I'll call I'm coming. I'll call Nwosu Chinamso. Unmute yourself and speak, please.
Okay, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Okay, my question is that sometimes I'm confused because there are so many platforms.
Okay.
I don't know actually I don't know the want to join. Like I'm doing business admin, so I will know the platform taking anything business admin so that I can just concentrate on one platform. Learning so many platforms.
Okay, so somebody is listening to you. If you are in business admin and you have WhatsApp platform for business admin, please post it. Everyone can chat now so that he would see and be able to join. Is that okay? So look in the chat, somebody will respond to you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'll call Henry Nwokolo. Unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon, sir.
One of the things that I want to throw more light on is one, when I was going through the course outline, they asked a question because it talked about the means of transportation in the Middle Age, and they asked a question that what was the means of transportation in Africa? And I see that Africa, just like as you brought the Arabian philosophers and discoveries in Middle East, we don't seem to have any African intervention at least in that period. So, and what was really their means of transportation? I tried to find out, and I discovered that one, they were talking about boats. What was boats really a means of transportation?
Goats?
Yes, boats.
Was it really a means? Boats, B-O-A-T?
Yes, was it really a means of transportation at that time?
That's when I would think that the boat is also still a means of transportation in some parts of Nigeria, I hope you know, and Africa, in the creeks where they have water and all that.
But if you talk about boat, I don't think it's that a civilized form of boat, because you can talk about canoe, you may talk about canoe, but not really the word boat. So I tried to find out more. They said animal, and
animal, yes.
Yes, walking and all that.
Walking,
I could take that, but talking about boats, I was not comfortable with it. So I said,
okay, that you would have preferred they say canoe.
Yes, maybe canoe then, because talking about middle age, and they asked that question.
Okay, okay. Well, you may not be incorrect. Maybe canoe, yeah. But is boat really that very advanced? I thought yacht is much more advanced than, you know, in a yacht, in a, well, yeah. Thank you.
And secondly, I looked at the barbarians who were always attacking the Roman kingdom at that time. I was probing to find out who they were, or who they were. And I got the Germans, or the goat. They call them the goats. G-O-T-H-E-S, the goats. And the Germans came from that, they were descendants of that tribe. And I came to realize that maybe that was why we have what is called the Goat Institute in Nigeria, because these people, they like to do something to sort of legalize who they are, to tell the world who they are. So if you are not, so I think that is what I just discovered about it. So I don't know if you think on that line or that direction.
Goethe Institute, they have it in Lagos, where they go for German studies.
Yes.
In certain universities where they study German, their students go there to go and now you know what happened during the Second World War, Adolf Hitler and the likes that wanted to make the whole world Germans. There is this idea of supremacy, and they want to conquer everybody or everyone. So it's something similar to that. But establishment of Goethe Institute, yeah, maybe at the base is one of the ways they also try to propagate the German culture, German language, and all. Maybe in a more refined way this time around. So you're not incorrect about thinking, yeah. Not incorrect, yes.
Okay, I'm not just trying to say, could it be the reason why they came from that? That is their root, the name.
At the time, yes, using very crude means.
Yes,
using crude means, yes.
So thank you. That is all I want to say.
Thanks for your contribution. They are valuable. So lower your hand. I won't be able to take lots of questions today. So I'm going to end this class at 4 minutes past 10. All right. But I'm putting my email address, which many of you should have. I'm going to put it here. You can write me your questions in email and I will answer. All right. Trust me, I'm going to answer them. So I'll take some more questions till 10 minutes past 4. Then if you think you have very pertinent questions to ask, please, I'm typing my email address to you so that you could send me an email and I would answer you. You can be sure that I will answer you, okay? So I'm going to call some more people to ask their question. I'll call Nedu Osinachi. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. From the lectures, I found out that this religion issue we are going through in Africa and taking away our mind from the rating, the science and the solution that is going to develop Africa. Europeans have suffered it before. And some scholars took it upon themselves to enlighten the people and they changed their mindset to Europe. So I can see that some scholars in Africa need to do a lot more. And we that you are being taught now, you're provoking our consciousness towards seeing how to enlighten our people and bring out their consciousness towards the written, which is technology and science. That most of Africa, we believe that God will do everything for us. We sit at home and believing that God will do it to us. I can see that Europeans have gone through this process a long time ago.
Yes,
and have changed their mindset. So people like you, scholars, and we that are being taught now, we need to be more realistic and more
proactive
in talking to people that don't understand, that are not as exposed as we are, so that we can see how we can come out from this problem. Because there's a lot, it's a very big problem in Africa. Every time we are going backwards. So I thank you. I learned something from this lecture, and I'm glad about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, too. Thank you for your contributions.
Okay, thank you.
So lower your hands. So I'll call Shehu. What happened to? I was going to call that person. Unmute yourself. Shehu something. Okay. I'll call Mohammed. Mohammed Ibrahim, unmute yourself.
I think you said I should unmute myself.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Okay, so let's show you go first.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Please, ma'am, don't forget to share the Gmail, ma'am.
I have shared it already.
Okay,
I have
I will
shared
check
my
on
email address already.
I will check on it. Thank you.
All right. So Mohammed.
I think you have the podium, ma. You said I should unmute myself.
Yes, you can speak.
Yeah, actually.
You will mute yourself since you're done speaking. Mohammed, go ahead. Mohammed, can you go ahead, please? Is Mohammed still there? Okay, so I'll call Mohammed Ibrahim. Unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Please, ma'am, I said you should not forget the Gmail. That's what I want to remind you, ma'am.
Which Gmail? Email address. I've sent it already.
Okay, I will check on it right now. I will check on it, ma'am.
Thank you. Please mute yourself and lower your hand.
Okay.
So we still have some small time. I'll call a lady. Victoria Uti. Unmute yourself. Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, how are you?
Okay. What I actually want to say is about the listing. If there's any way I can have access to other course material. Sorry, I mean to join other courses, because GST so far is the only thing I've been able to join.
What department are you?
Early childhood.
Are you on the GST 105 platform?
Yes.
So ask them. Ask. There should be somebody.
I have actually asked. I've not been getting anything.
Okay, so people who are in early childhood, Victoria, look in the chat. People in the early childhood, please post link to early childhood classes. Okay, you too, you can create a group, post it on the GST WhatsApp and say people in early childhood should join. So you can initiate one if nobody is sending anything. Is that okay?
Okay. All right.
You too can create a group, send and say this is early childhood, let's come together. All right?
Okay.
But look in the chat. But if you're in early childhood and you have a group link, post in the chat so that other people in your department can see. Mute yourself, Victoria. Thank you. And lower your hand. So, okay, I've overshot the time. I'm going to call one last person. Onyekachi Justina. Just as I said, look in the chat. I've put my email address. There are questions I won't be able to answer because of time. Send me an email, I will answer. So Onyekachi Justina, go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Please, my question is, what is the relationship between the dark age astrology with the current age.
The relationship between
with the current age.
You are breaking.
What is the relationship between the dark age astrology with the current age?
Current age, you mean our 21st century?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You see, science began in the ancient period. Last week, we looked at the contributions of Thales, Anaximander, and Anaximenes. So the astrologers of the time, the scientists of the time, they set the foundation for the very advanced one that we have in current times. So while our present science, if we use our present eye, 21st century mind and eyes to view the inventions of past ages, we would think they were quite stupid. How can we be saying horseshoe, horse collar were inventions at the time? But it's because we are very privileged. It has gone through several phases of advancement. So simply put, the relationship between astronomy in the dark age and now is that astronomy in the dark age provide a bedrock, a foundation, a pedestal for the astronomy that we have in 21st century. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you for that very insightful question.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. The question is very good. So time has gone. Just as I said, please send me emails with your questions or query. I will try very hard to answer all. There are many hands up here, all right? I can't take them all. I need to go. Okay? So thank you. I thank you all. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye. I'm ending the class.